Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. When the blazing sun is gone, when the nothing shines upon, then you show your little light. Twinkle, twinkle all dark night. Then the traveler in the dark thanks you for your little spark. He could not see which way to go if you did not twinkle so. Though I know not what you are, twinkle, twinkle, little star.
Oh boy, this one's going to be a real doozy. I don't even know where to start with this review. Motive really knocked it out the park with this game. As a longtime Dead Space fan, I was worried when I saw that Electronic Arts was going to be reviving the franchise, and I think I can speak for everyone here when I say that I was really worried. It had been almost 10 years since we last got a Dead Space game, and I don't have to be the one to say that the reception was less than stellar. When I was a kid, I had an infatuation, a fetish for horror games, if you will. I grew up playing a lot of survival horror along the lines of Resident Evil and Silent Hill. My first experience in the genre was Resident Evil 2 on the original PlayStation, and it was safe to say that the game used to make me shit my pants. One of my favorites as a kid was Resident Evil 4, which I played a good bit after it came out, after convincing my parents to eventually buy it, and my god, the jump from 3 to 4 was like the jump from Duke Nukem to Quake. I played Resident Evil 4 so many times that the disc wore out to the point where the cleaning machines could not resurface it anymore, and safe to say, it seemed like the days of Resident Evil 4 was pretty much done for me. Not too long after this happened, however, I saw on the TV, we had satellite at the time, a trailer that piqued my interest, one that ended with a familiar hand floating in space with the captions, Dead Space. I knew I had to get this game. I eventually did, and I was totally blown away. Remember how I said that jumping from Resident Evil 3 to 4 was like jumping from Duke Nukem to Quake? Jumping from Resident Evil 4 to Dead Space was like jumping from Doom to Half-Life. It had 10 times the atmosphere, 10 times less space to move around in, claustrophobia anyone, and 10 times more shit puddling in my pants as I trudged through the Ishimura, trying to find a way off that godforsaken hellhole. Anyways, enough meddling around in the past, let's take some time to show appreciation. First off, props to Electronic Arts for not making this game a microtransaction hell. This game is just as much a core single-player experience as the original was. There's a deluxe edition that you can buy that gives you some cool unique skins that you can wear, but if you buy the base game, then you are getting the full game. No DLC, no microtransactions, it is just pure unhinged carnage. I also want to give props to Motive here. I was worried about this game being a cash grab, but honestly, I want to see Motive remake the second game now. Not only do I want to see them remake the second game, I want to see the third game get rebooted, and then I think we can pass the torch from Visceral onto Motive and let them make the fourth game that we have been dreaming of for oh so long. Now, before we get on with this review, I want you to take off the nostalgia goggles for a second, alright? A lot of fan bases get nostalgic whenever they see another game come out or even an earlier game in their favorite franchise get a remake. Take them off right now. Rip them off, toss them in the fire, I'll give you a few seconds. They off yet? Dead Space Remake is an effing amazing game. This game doesn't need nostalgia to live up to the hype. EA put a lot of budget into the marketing. I mean, the marketing for this game was top tier, and they generated the perfect amount of hype for this game. It deserves all the hype it got. If you've never played the originals or even seen the previous games, you will absolutely love this title to death, especially if you're a big fan of the later Resident Evil games. Playing Dead Space Remake is like revisiting the past, but in a different way. Think of it like some kind of pleasant form of reverse dementia, where you have these memories with added memories on top of it. This game's like being gaslit in all the right ways, if that makes sense. Dead Space Remake is like New Game Plus for the franchise. It takes the old game and not only gives it a fresh coat of paint, but adds on to the lore and lets stories that were originally just text, implications, or even up to interpretation be told right in front of your very eyes. Don't get me wrong, some things were changed from the original game, but they do it in a way that is still respectful to the first title in the franchise. That being said, however, this game isn't a one-to-one copy of the original. Motive looked at all of the mainline entries in the franchise and took all of the very best aspects from every single game, namely Dead Space 2. For example, zero-G jumping, gone. We get to use the thrusters from the second and third game. They do some really cool stuff with this game that couldn't be done in the original, such as when you go back to the Kellyan, where you get to use zero-G and have to access another part of the ship. The open nature of the third game, the Ishimura is totally open to be explored as you see fit, and while you can play this game like the original, where it's pretty much just going down corridors and you just go in one direction, there are tangible rewards for steering off the beaten path and doing exploration of your own. What I'm getting at here is side missions. This game has side missions, and while the missions are totally optional, they allow for rewards of both knowledge and physical value. Side missions in games are usually a means to let you level up enough to continue on the main quest, but like I said, these are truly optional. But why would you want to do that? The side missions are legitimately enjoyable, and there also isn't like a billion missions to do just to rack up hours in the game. There are a select few side missions in the game, and they mostly get completed as you make your way through the Ishimura. And yes, sometimes you will have to make your way back through the Ishimura to complete a task, but the outcome is usually worth it and you get so much storytelling through these missions, not to mention the physical rewards. One of the side missions is called the Scientific Method, and it provides glimpses of Nicole's time on the Ishimura, how she is feeling, her and Isaac's relationship, her role during the necromorph infestation, her relationships with her colleagues, all stuff that we didn't get to see in the original game. It really gives Nicole a real role in the story rather than being a one-dimensional goal like she had gotten in the first game. One thing that this game doesn't inherit from the previous entries is the use of power nodes to unlock the engineering clauses, which you would think would impede on the survival horror aspect of the game, but it is something that really only worked in the original games. We still have unlockable rooms, but instead of using precious power nodes, we have replaced them with security cards. There are 4 levels of security cards: Level 1, Level 2, Level 3, and Master Override. You unlock the first 3 through regular gameplay, which allows you to unlock clauses that you couldn't access before because you didn't have the security clearance, and it also gives you loot because you will repace through some of these areas like the original game. But one of the side missions is to find all of the top level personnel on the ship's rigs to create a Master Override key for Isaac, something that is totally optional but gives you rewards that you don't want to miss out on. There are 8 of these doors and crates in the game, and almost all of them have rewards worth getting, including upgrades for your weapons that you couldn't find anywhere else in the game. Only one crate gives you a crappy gold semiconductor, and that crate was on the main path anyways. It was practically a freebie, and if you didn't have the Master Override, you were missing far more than that measly 3,000 credits. Let's move on to the atmosphere of the game, starting with sound. The sound in this game is phenomenal. Motive did an outstanding job with the music in this game. I mean, just listen to some of my favorite excerpts from the official soundtrack. But the soundtrack isn't the only place that shines in the auditory department of this game. The sound design in general is top notch, from the blaring crackle of the plasma cutter to the disgusting gurgle of a slasher. Every aspect of the sound design in this game is both total bliss and utter horror. At first, the ship is relatively quiet, but as the campaign progresses, eventually the ship breaks down into total madness, just as Isaac's psyche does. As you see and experience more and more hallucinations, this game will really start to mess with your head. You'll start hearing voices that aren't there, all mixed with guttural screams of the damned from the other side of the ship, sometimes from those that are not even necromorphs yet. The graphics of this game, top notch. This game is Steam Deck verified and it has definitely earned that rating. Despite the somewhat rocky launch for us Proton players in the beginning, there are some very minor graphical glitches here and there, but you have to really look for them, as in with a magnifying glass. Despite some almost non-existent shortcomings from that department, the game looks absolutely fantastic, and unlike some other franchises, it pays homage to the original game's atmosphere and art direction. Like I said, this game is like New Game Plus. This game takes the original and adds to it, while changing some things for the better. The game is really well optimized for how good it looks, and now to be fair, I am running a 6900 XT on a 1080p display, but my 1080p display runs up to 165 Hz, and I will tell you this, I played this game on ultra settings with no FSR, and there were very few times that it broke below that threshold. This game looks like an Unreal 5 engine game, but plays as smooth as a Source game, something the original didn't even accomplish on PC. 2008 was just a bad year for PC ports. But to put in perspective of how good the graphics look, I played this game with the Mesa drivers, which do not support ray tracing on AMD at the time. I didn't even know this game supported ray tracing, and honestly, I could give less of a shit. If you can do ray tracing, then cool, but this game looks absolutely astonishing even without it. The attention to detail is something to admire as well. Things that happen off camera can be observed later on in areas that would otherwise be accessible in the previous game. I mean, details that honestly, they could have been overlooked because most people wouldn't think to go back and look for them. Believe me, I went back and looked for them. Let's talk about the gameplay for a bit. The core gameplay is still the same as it was in the original game. It's the same limb dismemberment action that we dealt with before, but what's different is that this game hits you a lot harder than the original did. If the original game hit you in the face with a fist, this game is like getting hit in the face by a drug dealer with a baseball bat. Unlike the original game, the engine here isn't limited, which means that the enemy count can go up, and in situations that may have been a breeze in the OG game, become hairy pretty quick in the remake. The combat loop improves upon the original as well, and it really shines in the survival horror aspect because some guns are better at killing certain necros, but you'll find that ammo for those guns are expensive and rare, forcing you to use a weapon that you otherwise wouldn't use because you'd save it for other enemy types. Once again, forcing you to burn through those resources. For instance, the plasma cutter is great for dismembering enemies, but the ammo is expensive and it doesn't do as good for enemies with a smaller profile like the swarmers. The pulse rifle is good for when you need precision, but you'll find that it takes a lot of ammo to kill enemies with it and is generally better for crowd control, so that you can switch to a more suitable weapon. The Ripper is sort of weak, but is good for a close combat when you need to stave off a crowd of angry necros, and the ammo is pretty cheap and common, and the contact beam is pretty much the god weapon, but ammo is expensive and you burn through it pretty quickly. Best save for when you really need it. The game improves on other aspects of gameplay as well. One of my favorites is the rootable power mechanics. The rootable power mechanics in this game are very innovative. It allows you to approach a situation in multiple ways that sometimes let you choose your advantages and disadvantages, but sometimes they are used in the storytelling to force you outside of your comfort zone. Like in the morgue, where you have to turn off the lights to move a battery. Or in the engine room when you have to choose, do I want to turn off the oxygen and keep the lights on, or do I want to keep the oxygen on and become damn near blind? It also forces you to play the game in a way where you may not have access to all doors and be able to cheese past the room of necromorphs, such as in hydroponics. It's a cool feature that I would like to see return in the later games because it gives you options, but don't let it fool you. Some options that are feasible for some places might not be great for others. It really is a strategy mechanic, and you have to take the time to observe your surroundings to make sure you don't get effed up because you decide to turn off the oxygen in the room where the oxygen tank is in a necro alley. This game also has some fun stats as well. There are some mini games that you can play in order to receive tangible awards. For instance, later in the game you can play a sport called Z-Ball that upon reaching a certain score nets you a certain level. Each level you reach, you will unlock a reward, and upon completing the highest level, you will unlock high score mode. See which of your friends gets the highest score. Another one is the shooting gallery, which I will warn you, do not go into the shooting gallery unprepared. That's all I'm going to leave it at, because I don't want to spoil it. Just make sure that you're stocked up on ammo before you go in there. This game even carries the Dead Space tradition of ping, which is a running joke in the franchise, and you can find the treasure in the Ishimura in exchange for a cool 30,000 credits. Now for the final part of my review is the story. I'm not going to get too in-depth with the story here because, as I've been saying, this game adds on to the original and changes some things here and there, and I really don't want to spoil the game too much for you. I really insist that you play this game before you watch anything else on it if you plan on playing it. For the most part, it is the same story that you got in the original Dead Space. There are some added characters, including one in the Kellyan, but none of the added content detracts from the story, and admittedly, some of the added content doesn't add too much to the story either. For instance, Kendra isn't exactly the same as she was in the first game, and is a new character by the name of Haley Johnson who specializes in heavy weaponry and riot control for the Kellyan. There are some key differences, like the reason you go back to the Kellyan is different than in the first game, but for about 90% of it is a faithful remake of the first game, with heavy improvements that don't detract from the original game whatsoever, and in fact improve upon them. That being said, this game does a really good job at getting your hopes up that something is going to be different, and that's a good thing. But like I said, if you played the original Dead Space, you know the story for the most part, but I will tell you that playing through the game a second time is absolutely worth it. You can get an alternate ending that I'm not going to spoil for you, but it is going to be hype. All I'm going to tell you is find the marker fragments and place them in Captain Matthias's room, and then just play the rest of the game again like normal. I don't really like to give ratings to games, but if I were going to give this game a rating, it would be a 10 out of 10 easily. Seeing this game succeed, especially when successors like Callisto Protocol failed, is honestly appalling. It's like this game gave all of the bad EA is known for to Callisto and kept everything that made the original game good, while taking the good stuff from the later games. Good job, Motive. You really nailed it with this one, and I'm excited to see what the future brings for both Motive and the Dead Space franchise. EA made the right call with Motive, and while it doesn't lessen the pain of killing Visceral whatsoever, I'd like to think that the guys of Visceral are proud to see that their baby is getting love again, even if they're no longer a part of the franchise. Thanks for watching my review, guys. Sorry it took so long for me to get this review out. I've been teasing at a project for a while, and I haven't stated the nature of it. I wanted it to be a surprise, and the thing is, I really wanted to take my time with this game and be thorough. I've been playing it for about a month now, because I just wanted to soak in the atmosphere. Tell me what you think of this video. I like doing review content, but they do take a lot of work, so I want to make sure it is something you guys enjoy. So if you liked it, please like this video and let me know in the comments. I enjoy talking with you guys, even if it's a small, brief discussion, because it makes me feel good to know that people like my content. I know that this is my channel, but I do care about your opinion on what you like to see, and if you liked it, please subscribe and show my videos to your friends. Let's get the ball rolling on Linux gaming as best as we can. If you want to get into Linux gaming, check out some of my video essays in my Linux gaming content, which I'm going to be pumping out more soon. I've got some guides coming up soon, and I may do a distro review of some of the more gaming, quote-unquote, oriented distros like Garuda and Nabara. And in fact, I had a watcher ask about Garuda, and I've checked it out before I started making videos. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you got the funds and loved the original, this remake is totally worth it. Check it out for yourself, and don't get spoiled by any Let's Players out there. I hope you guys have an awesome, wonderful rest of y'all's day.